welcome to the 12th of our 13 nights, our performance series celebrating this exhibition, Future Feminism. So, my name is Antony, and I'm one of the 5 artists who are involved in putting this show together. Sometimes when I'm sitting on stage, when I do shows, or my music shows, I like to pretend I'm like a piece of glass and you can just see through me and you're looking at something that's behind me. Helps me feel more comfortable. The reason we call ourselves Future Feminists is not because we were trying to, claim that we were the successors to previous forms of feminism. Was because the women in my group, in my affinity group, are preoccupied with the future, and a lot of their work deals with a kind of eyes wide open approach to vanishing biodiversity, changing ecology, and we have a kind of a, I guess it started for me as a transgender person saying, I can't separate my experience as a trans person from the experience of, you don't need to turn it up too high, from the experience of women. And then an old thing I learned a long time ago was you can't separate the experience of women from the experience of the ecology. So, I mean, future feminism literally just means my particular affinity group is thinking about the future. That's our speciality as artists, that's what we're dreaming about. And not in a particularly romantic way. I think maybe in the early 80s there was still some vestiges of the glamour apocalypse. But I think the reality of apocalypse, of looming apocalypse, or environmental degradation has become so much more tangible in all of our minds. It's almost blasé, how quickly we went from denial to just a kind of reluctant, resigned acceptance of the fact that we're, heading into a massive extinction event. So, a lot of our work individually is quite dark. And as an affinity group, we decided to do a piece about 3 years ago. And we started talking to each other in a circle. We started witnessing each other's processes, and especially witnessing each other's points of view, taking more time than we would normally to witness a friend's point of view, sitting for 10 hours a day in a circle and listening to each other. And it was something that none of us had ever done before. And obviously, we later learned that that's called consciousness raising. And there was something really beautiful about it, and if there's anything that we'd like to offer you in this exhibition, it's a model for talking to each other. That we can organize ourselves in a different way than our life. Our lives are structured by, increasingly now, by technology, sort of structuring our terms for communicating with each other. But you can step out of that time and sit in a circle with your 3 best friends for a month and hold hands and think about where we're heading collectively, and you can participate. We can participate. That's the way that I can participate. And it broke my sense of loneliness. It broke my sense of alienation. It was empowering. We've been criticized by some, like, academic feminists for having too essentialist of a point of view. Essentialist meaning, from what I understand, that people will be assigned character on the basis of their biology or of their sex. And I would like to suggest, as a transgender person, and the advent of medical transsexualism has actually been kind of shed some light on the mutability of gender. And obviously, past waves of feminists have had to insist that women are as capable of making brutal decisions as men in order to participate in governance. And of course, if we acknowledge that we were of a different constitution, it would be obvious grounds for us being disqualified from the conversation. One thing that we were talking about as future feminists in our group was, because we so valued the character of the feminine archetype, exactly those things that we have to hide away in a rational discourse in order to be allowed to take a seat at the table. That actually, we wanted to suggest, in the spirit also of the Feminist Party in Sweden, that we no longer want to participate in male systems. We don't want equal access to male systems. We want to participate in restructuring feminine systems of governance, and what do those look like? Because we've never really engaged them before, at least in the memory of history. So, the point of view being that everyone contains within them a spectrum of possibilities in terms of the ways that we can behave that are induced, obviously, by your environment, by nurture versus nature, obviously, like your social conditioning, but also that are deeply impacted by your biology, by the amount of testosterone or estrogen you have in your body, and also by the hardwiring of your brain, the predisposition of your brain. And the more we can become accountable for those different impulses within us, the more we can actually harness our behavior, especially the more destructive behaviors that are seems to be attached to the gestures of the male archetype, the prehistoric male archetype within us. That's our kind of idea. And the other idea was that men are completely innocent, was a relief in a way to realize that men and women and all of us are completely innocent, and that we're just wrestling with bodies, wrestling with impulses, jumping out of our bodies. I read an article recently that said that we're in this technological age, but in terms of our impulses, 99% of our behavior is being dictated by the impulses of someone that was still living on the savannah as a hunter-gatherer. There's a lot of reasons why we don't acknowledge our bodies, and there's a lot of ways that we've been trained to cut ourselves off from our bodies. I'm thinking of an idea I've been thinking about, that it's almost like a boy child that so resented his mother's creativity, his mother's ability to physically pour forth, that he wanted to kill his mother and appropriate her creativity. And that's sort of the birth of sky god religions. Suddenly it's a man in the sky pouring his creative impulses through a woman's body, giving birth to more men. It's his idea that the world was created, and it's his idea that the world will implode, that we will manifest an apocalypse, and that our spirits will all fuck off to a paradise elsewhere. you know, and that we will ascend, that the end of nature will promises our ascension as souls, you know, and how do we get to a point where we literally conceive of our souls as separate from the rest of nature, and how insidiously capitalism has collaborated with a few thousand years of shitty sky god religious doctrine to provoke this apocalypse. And how radically can I, as a feral artist, collaborate for other women from my corner of the world to imagine the specter of hope in this scenario. You know, that's really the bottom line, is can you actually imagine hope? Can you actually imagine what does hope look like when you read in the newspaper that 50% of the birds in America will be dead within 50% of the species in America will be extinct within the next 100 years, that the ocean will be like 350% more acidic. What does hope look like for us now? And as artists, I feel compelled to explore that. Not because I'm particularly seduced by apocalypse, but because I'm eyes wide open, and that seems like what we're kind of plunging into. And finally, how much can I participate? How vividly can I participate? We were very motivated by this song that Laurie Anderson wrote called "Only an Expert Can Deal with a Problem." And we were thinking, you know, we're not experts. Do we have a right to participate? Do we have a right to enter the dialogue? You know, we've been systematically drawn out of the conversation and even encouraged not to participate in the conversation because we don't know enough. I don't know enough about feminism to talk about feminism. Someone even wrote that I probably never experienced misogyny. You know, but what I found is that my grandmother, who had a 5th grade education, knew everything that I know about ecology, and that the women that I met in Australia, the Mardu Aboriginal women that I met in Australia, who couldn't even write, knew more about ecology than all of us in this room combined. That every taxi driver knows what's going on, and that we're all experts in ecology today, and that we're all experts in feminism. I'd like to thank you all so much for supporting this process and this exhibition. And we really offered it forward in hope, in an attempt to participate and in a spirit of generosity. We want to do service. We want to be free. So now the performance tonight is by a very beautiful creature. His name is Terence Coe. Thank you.